Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It's Chris Nichols here. Today we've got an interesting lens to play with that has a focal length you've probably never heard of before. I mean, hell, I've never even heard of this focal length either. And you know, we've seen a lot of lenses lately going ultra wide to normal range, but now I've got in my hands the new Sony 20-70 f4G series. Now, this is basically giving me the flexibility of a 24-70, but with significantly more wide angle. Now, we've been testing a lot of our lenses lately on the Sony a7R5 because the 61 megapixel sensor really pushes lenses to their limit. Now, we've got a lovely day out here in Kananaskis country to enjoy testing this lens. Now, you might think something with this kind of focal range would be bulky and huge, but it really isn't. We've got an f4 aperture all the way through. It's quite compact, so let's talk about the handling features next. Indeed, this lens is very compact, 488 grams, just under a quarter of a noct, perfect for just walking around as a general purpose compact lens. It is weather sealed, being, the way most G series are built. Does actually have custom buttons. I was surprised to see that on such a compact little lens, and an aperture ring with a lock so you can lock it into auto if you want or out of auto. 72mm filter thread. I mean, really, this is a very compact but very full featured design. Now, so far, I'm really enjoying this lens. It's just like a general purpose walk around, not only because it's compact and has that versatile focal range, but also because the close-up capability is quite nice. It does its best work at 70 millimeters. I'm getting basically 0.4 times magnification, just a little bit less than half life size. I mean, that's actually pretty decent for a zoom like this. And we're not getting the most working distance, but it's not terrible. I'm not jamming my hood up against stuff. I got a little bit of clearance. So this is actually a really nice, casual macro lens. Now, this lens actually packs two XD linear autofocusing motors into it. What we're finding is autofocus is blazingly fast, as you'd expect out of XD linear. So as far as any autofocusing needs go, this lens will absolutely keep up. Now, of course, a lens with an ultra-wide focal length like this lends itself to landscape photography, and you're going to shoot towards the sun quite a bit in those situations. So first off, flare, very well controlled, not a real loss of contrast, handled sun coming to the lens quite well, not seeing any major ghosting problems either, so those are all positives. When it comes to sunstars for landscape, they're better than I thought they would be, but they're pretty average. I mean, you can see here, nothing to write home about. But overall, performs well shooting towards the sun. So of course, for photography, it's been a lot of fun having the 20mm capabilities on this lens, but for video as well, there's a lot of interesting benefits that this lens brings to the table. Not just having that nice 20mm, but also when it comes to other video features. Let's talk about that. See, Sony's utilizing a couple digital features in their cameras to help you with video. Now, one of those is active steady shot, where the camera crops in tighter, and then as your camera shakes, it can digitally adjust the frame against that shake. The other is breathing compensation, where again, the camera crops in tighter, and basically as the lens naturally breathes as you focus in and out, the camera will digitally adjust the frame against that breathing. Now, both these features are very helpful, but you're losing wide and focal length. Now, this lens actually, first off, has some breathing in it, although it wasn't as bad as we thought. You can see here, but the real magic here is having that extra focal length to sacrifice. We actually did the math here, and if you use breathing compensation, you're basically losing just 1 millimeter on the wide angle range, and then if you add active steady shot on that, you're losing another 3 millimeters on that wide angle. Suffice to say, having this 20mm here and turning on both features at the same time, I'm still getting a really nice 24mm equivalent wide angle, and so that's where a lens like this really shines, where a standard 24mm zoom unfortunately loses a lot of wide angle. Now, bokeh on this lens is actually really quite nice. So first off, you can see specular highlights nice and round. Even when you stop down, that doesn't really change. A little bit of a soap bubble effect, but really when you look at transitions from in focus to out of focus, it's nice and smooth. So actually really quite pleasing shallow depth of field look to this lens. Now the sun broke out, we got some metal grading here, one of my favorite Bokeh tests, so took a few shots here. Bokeh is that longitudinal chromatic aberration where you get color fringing in the out of focus areas, both foreground and background of your shots, and it's really hard to get rid of in post. Luckily this lens, as you can see, basically very minimal Bokeh, not an issue to worry about. Now to the test charts for our sharpness test. So first off, at 20mm shooting wide open at f4, actually the centers are really quite nice. I didn't notice much improvement even when stopping down to f8. When we go to the corners, you can see there again, pretty similar, a little bit softer wide open, but when you stop down, those sharpen up quite nicely. At 70 millimeters, I noticed that the center shooting wide open at f4, it is actually quite sharp, but there's some loss of contrast. That does go away the minute you stop down. Here you can see the centers at f8. Again, the sharpness doesn't really improve, just contrast overall in the frame gets a little bit better. Shooting in the top left corner, wide open at f4, again, pretty decent. When we stop down, that improves a bit. So I would say this lens overall a little bit sharper at 20 millimeters than it is at 70, but it was usable wide open all the way through the focal range and didn't really need to stop down that much. All right, so it's time to wrap things up. The light's going down. We're next to our favorite little roadside wishing well here, so pardon the traffic noise. You can hear that right now. But I've had a great time today. I mean, what's not to love about this lens? It's compact, it's optically good. I like the f4 aperture. I mean, frankly, if this was a 24 to 70 f4 that I was walking around with, I would have had a great day today. But the beauty is that I get that extra wide angle. We've talked about some of the advantages this has for video cameras if they're shooting full width, but even if you've got a camera where its best shooting is in a crop mode, this would make a lot of sense to help mitigate that issue. I could see if you had an APS-C Sony body and maybe you're looking forward to moving to full frame eventually, this could be a great buy just because it also gives you that, you know, coverage of like a 28-ish to 105 walk around lens. That'd be great until you're ready to move up to full frame. This could also be excellent just if you are a Sony shooter and you're looking for a good affordable lens. You could go 20 to 70, or if you say, Chris, to hell with ultra wide, well, you've got that excellent 24 to 105 to choose from as well. I've had such a great time with this. I mean, this is probably my favorite standard zoom I've used from Sony to date. Just really, really nice to have. So if I had a coin on me, if I even carry change anymore, I'd check into that wishing well and wish for one of these. But I could also just save up some coins, and frankly, not that many, to afford this lens. It's really not that expensive, especially considering how versatile it is. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that little jaunt with the 20 to 70 out here in Kananaskis. Do check out DPReview.com. The sample galleries that we shot today are there, of course. Leave your comments below, Instagram and Twitter. Subscribe and like. We'd always appreciate that. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon with another episode of DPReview TV.